Welcome to App Stories, a weekly exploration of the world of apps. Today's show is brought to you by a new sponsor, Walter 2. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is my co-host, Federico Vitici. Hi, Federico.
Hi, John. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's Friday, not our usual recording day. I don't know. I thought we could do a slightly different topic than we typically would do on App Stories today. What do you think?
Yeah, so you had this idea of not just a check-in on iOS 11, which has been out, I guess, for about 5 months since September. And if you count the beta period, I've been on iOS 11 since the first beta released at WWDC last year. It's been 8 months since iOS 7 has been on my devices, my iPad first, and then when I came back also on the iPhone. But we've talked about iOS 11 in general before. What we wanted to do is we wanted to understand and measure, if possible, the impact and the effects of iOS 11, not just on the way that we get things done, like the way that we work, because we've talked about those, the multitasking, the iPad, the drag and drop, but also on our general iOS habits, like all the various types of apps that we maybe don't necessarily cover every week, talking about lifestyle apps or health or fitness or media consumption, the way that we read the news or read books or play games. Like, what are the ways that iOS 11 has changed, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse, has improved or not, the way that we use our iPhones and iPads. And I think this should be, we can cover a lot of apps, we can cover a lot of iOS features. It should be maybe a classic App Stories episode, John.
The way you and I use our devices is different. And I think me coming from the Mac and using the Mac for a lot of the work that I do during the week, I've kind of more eased into iOS 11 a little more slowly than you have. I mean, obviously you did the review last summer, and as a result, you had no choice but to dive headfirst into iOS 11. So I think you're kind of a more advanced iOS 11 user than I am at this point, especially on the iPad. But I've really started to warm to it and use it to change the way both I do my work, but also a lot of the fun and spare time things that I do as well.
So I think a good way to approach this, because it's such a broad topic, maybe a brief description of how we actually use our iPhones and iPads. Again, besides work, because yes, we do lots of email, we do lots of writing, we use text editors, we manage Mac Stories, we do Club Mac Stories, and we do podcasts. So we keep a lot of text-based apps on our devices. But besides that, for example, my iPhone 10, I listen to a lot of music and I listen to a lot of podcasts. And it's the way for me, from a media consumption perspective. I really hate saying media consumption. It feels dirty, but that's what it is. I watch a lot of YouTube, which is also useful now because of my new TV that we mentioned last week.
Mm-hmm.
With the Chromecast, it's so easy with the YouTube app on iOS to stream a video from the iPhone and watch it on the TV.
Right.
I listen in Overcast and listen to music, which is another mini topic that I'll cover in a few minutes. But I also, with the new year, I started my new workout routine and actually my new sort of a new lifestyle in general. And so the iPhone is so important for the communication with the Apple Watch. So all the data that gets saved in the health app, which I actually open a lot every day to check on the stats and on the numbers that the Apple Watch collects. And of course, the workout functionality from Apple that goes into the activity app, but also Workouts Plus by our friend _David Smith, which is just excellent. Also, I do a lot of basically everybody I know in Italy. I use a lot of WhatsApp, and because I have to, but also messaging in general. It's something that it's so perfect for the iPhone. And I would say that, I mean, if you look at my home screen, there's messages, there's WhatsApp, and there's Slack. I don't know if you want to count Twitter as a messaging app, but I also use Twitter DMs a lot because I don't like using email. Photos, of course, everybody takes pictures with their iPhones, and I've tried a bunch of third-party apps, but for managing photos or alternatives to the main camera app, but I just tend to go back to the standard Apple stuff. So photos and camera, not even the camera icon on my home screen. I just launch the camera either from the lock screen or control center. I'm one of those people.
Right.
And I want to call out shopping because I think maybe it's obvious, but both when I'm going grocery shopping with my girlfriend or when I'm shopping online, I buy a lot of stuff. Not necessarily just Amiibo, on Amazon. And I tracked all those orders from Amazon Italy, UK, and Amazon US, and I tracked them all with deliveries. So deliveries, I use deliveries a lot because maybe it's a problem. But I've also been testing this different kind of shopping list app. It's called Bring, and it's on the iPhone, it's on the iPad, I think it's on the web, it's on the Apple Watch, and it's similar to Grocery, which is the one that I talked about a few months ago. But what I like is that it tries to apply the same automatic sorting for, like, for example, at the supermarket that I go to, vegetables come before pasta, in the order that you shop inside the store. And it tries to apply the same feature, but also you can use the app in English, but you can have automatic suggestions for results in Italian.
Oh, interesting.
So I can go in the app and I can type in, I don't know, spaghetti, and there's all kinds of results in the Italian language, because I think it's made in Europe, and of course we have many different kinds of languages in Europe. So it's necessary to people from Spain, from France, from Italy. So you can localize just the list of results, which is great, and each result has a custom icon. So when I type in spaghetti, I get a bowl of pasta as the icon for the item, which is super nice. Anyway, shopping. I do a lot of shopping. And of course, the iPads. I don't think I need to talk about my iPads much, because I talked about them so much. I write, I manage the club, I use Ulysses, Trello, too many email clients. I use it there to prepare show notes that later go into Google Docs. And I mean, basically the article that I wrote, my computer for everything.
Right.
That's how I use my iPad. That's everything that I do on the iPad. Basically everything that people would normally do on a computer, on a Mac or a PC, I do on the iPad. So, and I have two of them because Mike convinced me to use two, and he's a terrible friend.
I know. I'm resisting Mike's influence on that one so far. But let me ask you two questions before I dive into mine, which is, first of all, on YouTube. Do you use that primarily on your iPhone or on your iPad?
I would say that I don't like what I do here, but I watch a lot of YouTube on my iPhone. Yes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm more of an iPad YouTube user. Because what I'll do is say, I'm usually home during the day by myself, so I'll make lunch and I'll set up YouTube and eat a sandwich and watch a couple of YouTube videos, that sort of thing.
Do you use YouTube TV, the live TV service that you can have in America?
I don't. I looked into that but instead signed up for Hulu TV, because Hulu's live offering has more to offer. It's a little more expensive. I think it's $40 versus $35, but it has more channels than YouTube. And YouTube only just this week came to the Apple TV, and Hulu was ready on Apple TV right out of the box.
Okay. What's your second question?
Okay, my second question, I guess not so much a question as an observation, which is, I'm glad you added shopping, because I often don't think about shopping when it comes to my iOS devices, but the iPhone really is my primary shopping device, whether it's, like today I was, after we got the newsletter out, I went over to the grocery store, picked up a few things for the weekend, and used my, Apple Pay to pay for my groceries, which is...
Do you want to know my Apple Pay story?
Yes,
I told you what I did.
No, I don't think.
So for WWDC last year,
right?
I guess I created, but I signed up for this Italian prepaid card from this very popular Italian bank, National Bank. And so I got this super ugly debit card from them, which worked with Apple Pay. And in San Jose, I was able to pay with Apple Pay. I paid with using my iPhone and my Apple Watch for the Tube in London. It was great. And then a few months ago, I don't know what I did, but this app was asking me to enter both a password and a PIN code. And whatever I saved in one password was not working. So I foolishly tried many times, because I thought maybe I'm pasting this wrong.
Sure,
but
my
my account got locked out for security reasons, and I haven't been able to log back in since November. I have like 20 euros left on the prepaid card.
Yeah, is this the card that they redesigned in Apple Pay that you tweeted about a few days ago?
Hold on. I didn't tweet about it. I
know where
sent it
this
to
is
you
going.
on iMessage. So I tried to call them up on the on the phone, and none of the options are working. And I think I spoke to a nice lady, and she told me that I need to go to the nearest physical location for this bank in Viterbo, I think, not even in Rome. So I need to go speak to somebody to get my account unlocked. So that was just too much, you know. Eventually, they're gonna call me because maybe they're gonna need to pay some fee or of some kind, and then maybe they will unlock my account. In the meantime, I I signed up for N26, which is this popular online internet
right.
banking service in Europe. They're based in Germany. They create a bank account for you. They send you a very nice looking transparent debit card, a Mastercard, which I added to Apple Pay. There's no stupid double password PIN stuff. You can just log in with the password and Face ID, which is awesome. And the app is super nice looking. So I'm back on the Apple Pay train, and I'm gonna be able to pay for breakfast and coffee on the tube in a few months, which is nice.
Yeah, you gotta be ready. You gotta be ready for all that coffee we're gonna buy.
So anyway, shopping. Yes, we do a lot of shopping.
All right. So yes, and so my shopping is that it's Apple Pay. It's also primarily Amazon, but whatever else, right? But for me, I think I probably use my iPhone 10 more for everyday work, I think, than you do, and I think it's a holdover from commuting for so many years.
Yes, it is.
Posting stories to Mac Stories while I'm speeding into the city on a train, that kind of thing. So like this morning when we put together Mac Stories Weekly, I sit here in front of my Mac and I've got MailChimp open and I'm putting all the sections together. And then as I need to do things like we have the home screen, and the home screen means I got to go grab somebody's picture from Twitter and I got to turn it into a round avatar, and there's a bunch of things we do, and we have those all in workflows. And so I have this weird combo workflow where I'm simultaneously working on my Mac and working on my iPhone, creating things like round avatars or uploading app icons to MailChimp so we can put them in the newsletter. So I do a lot of work on my iPhone still. It's changing a little bit, and I'm moving more and more to the iPad, but I do a lot of work on the iPhone overall. But I think beyond that, my uses are very similar to yours. I listen to a lot of music. YouTube, as I said, more of an iPad thing for me than an iPhone thing. Reading, I like Apple. I actually like Apple News. You know who turned me around on Apple News was Graham Spencer.
It's not wrong though. I
I know.
Accept it for what it is. It's fine.
And you know what? After you use it for a while, it actually tunes itself to your interests a little bit better than, say, Apple Music, which maybe we can get into.
I still see too much of your president in Apple News. I mention it because there's no way to turn it off on Apple News.
Right.
And because the top hits section, right, that is mostly curated by Apple. And so whatever Apple thinks it's important for you to know, you cannot fully tune that out. I wonder if the changes coming in iOS 11.3, I think Apple mentioned improved recommendations in the top hits section, like you can maybe personalize more, or maybe there's a more intelligent algorithm. I don't know. But it's interesting that it's a mix of algorithmic stuff. Like, for example, my Apple News picked up the fact that I want to hear about Nintendo. But the top hits, no matter how many times I dislike certain stories, they just will not go away.
Yeah, that is true. I've noticed that as well. But it's really, I guess it's the next section on down where I think it's tuned pretty well. Because for a while, all of a sudden, I was getting tons of Bitcoin stories, and it's like I've had enough of Bitcoin.
Are you mining, John? Are you a cryptocurrency guy?
I am. No, I'm not mining. So I disliked them, and they went away. But and the Nintendo stuff floated up. So I think it's it's gotten a lot better. And so I'll read that in the mornings. My iPad is where I start the day. I catch up on overnight Twitter. I catch up on RSS. I take a quick peek at my email, although I don't respond unless something really needs to be responded to. And then I head on down, sit in front of my Mac, and start my day. So for me, iOS is kind of a early morning thing, midday when I'm taking a break, maybe watching a little YouTube. And then in the evening, I kind of revisit the iPad and use it for, if I'm doing any work in the evening, whether it's writing, research, or whatever. Usually that's on the iPad Pro 2. Thanks to Walter, too, for sponsoring App Stories this week. I'm excited to tell you about our latest sponsor, Walter 2, a Mac app that lets you bypass iTunes and get your content onto your iOS devices quickly and seamlessly. This is the kind of app I love. It's incredibly simple to use and interact with, doing all the heavy lifting under the hood for you automatically. To transfer files to your iOS devices, just drag them onto Walter's drop zone. That's all there is to it. Walter automatically detects if it's music, a movie, or a TV show, filling in metadata as it goes, so it ends up in the right app, like the Videos app or the Music app. It handles file types that iOS can't, too, like FLAC, MKV, and AVI, including Ultra HD 4K, without any quality loss. There's no need to use a separate file converter app. If Walter has to convert an app to a different file format, it's smart about it too. If you send it a lossless file that it has to convert, it'll convert it into a lossless format. But Walter handles a lot more, not just movies and music. It also handles PDFs, EPUBs, and ringtones too. And it does all of this wirelessly without iTunes as an intermediary. Just drag your files onto Walter's drop zone and let it take care of the rest. I've got one more tip for you. If you use iCloud Music Library on your iOS device but not your Mac, that means you can't sync using iTunes. But you can with Walter because you bypass iTunes. Using Walter, you can get all of that non-Apple music that you have straight to your iPhone or iPad without worrying about whether you can sync with iTunes. Softorino, the maker of Walter, has a special deal just for App Stories listeners. Use the coupon code AppStories at checkout for 30% off your purchase. That's a fantastic deal, and it won't be available for long, so don't wait. So go check out Walter. There's a free trial so you can try it for yourself and see how great this app is before you decide to buy. I think you'll love it. It's an incredibly easy way to get music, ringtones, videos, and books on your iOS devices without having to deal with iTunes or file converters. Thanks again to Walter, too, for sponsoring the show. We should probably get into some specifics, right? I mean, that's kind of an overview of both how we both use it, but we had some examples of things that have changed for each of us.
So I think if it's okay, we can borrow with full attribution the classic Relay FM round robin style.
Oh,
And
round robin, yeah.
we are going around a round robin of two is kind of sad. It's more fun when it's
Yes.
when it's three people or four, but we can round robin me
right.
and you.
As long as we don't have to pay any royalties to Mike and Steven.
I hope not. So I thought it would be fun to call out some specific examples of the ways that iOS 11 has changed how we use our devices, which is a super general idea, but I want to get into some specific examples that I've been saving. So the first one from me is how in the summer I thought I would be able to use Apple's podcast app on the iPhone and the iPad, but how eventually I started moving away from it again and I went back to Overcast.
I could have saved you some time on that one, Federico.
Well, sometimes you gotta understand what you're losing to fully appreciate the value of that thing.
All right.
That's what I like to believe.
It's very deep.
It's very deep, very philosophical. Initially, I thought I would like the Apple Music UI approach. I like the way that Apple Music looks. I like the iOS 11 aesthetic. I'm a fan of the typography and the colors. And I thought this is fine in podcasts too. I like where this is going. My main problem, which is something that I sort of alluded to in my iOS 11 review, is the design of the Listen Now page. I'm still confused by Apple's decision to make it so hard to manage the episodes that end up in the Listen Now queue. So I opened up the podcasts app today, and among the recent episodes, there was one from ATP. And the view said ATP episode 259, and then there was a label that said 50 more episodes. So I tapped in. Of course, I mean, that's a big number. I don't want to be 50 episodes behind.
Right.
So I tapped in and it took me to a screen that didn't show me like the 50 more episodes. You need to tap again. So that's 2 pages that you need to navigate into. And then when you reach it's called the My Episodes page. So there's this difference between what's in my episodes versus available episodes. That's two different screens for basically the same thing. And in the my episodes view, which is where the count goes up, you need to manually swipe on each episode and delete it from your queue. And there's no edit button to say select all and archive. There's no metaphor of archive or listen to. It's just either you keep it in my episodes or you don't. But if you want to remove it, you got to do it manually for each one of them. And if there's an edit feature, I couldn't find it, which I think is equally bad. And at that point, I was like, I now remember why I went back to Overcast. It was the combination of audio effects, which, Smart Speed is awesome. And it has a tangible effect on how much time I save when I listen to podcasts. But also this design, I can see why people think it's confusing because it's nice. It looks nice. I like the colors. I like the approach. But if you're a serious podcast listener, but even if you're a casual fan, I think it's just confusing to have this separation, all these interactions to manage what ends up in the My Episodes page. So I guess what iOS 11 did, and also there's a recently played section, which I wrote in my review. I don't understand why it's there. It makes no sense. Why would you want to see again stuff you already listened to? This is not how podcast people work.
No.
It's not like how we think about podcasts. Anyway.
No, I think Apple Podcasts in a lot of ways is designed for people who want to listen to one-off episodes, maybe.
Yeah, maybe, I guess.
And if you really want to subscribe and you want to catch all of a certain show, I think you're much better off whether it's Overcast or Castro or Pocket Cast. Those to me are like the three main ones that I like a lot.
So basically, I guess what podcast did is it made me appreciate Overcast again. It's kind of a down note. The next items I have are more fun. I promise.
All right. So I guess I'll start with an observation about utilities that I use on the iPad. And an app that I've used for a long time that I really like is Opener. And I feel like Opener is even better now that we have iOS 11 because a lot of times I'll be sitting with two apps open. I'll have Tweetbot on the left and Notes on the right or whatever it is, or Safari on the right. And I'll use Opener to get the links to the app that I want, whether it's a YouTube video to actually go to the YouTube app or whether it's a tweet link that you send me in messages or something like that. So it actually opens in Tweetbot instead of on Twitter on the web or something like that. Opener is a fantastic way to make sure your stuff opens where you want it to. And especially if you have a pair of apps open and you don't want to be in that situation where you tap on something and all of a sudden it opens a third app and kind of tears down your setup. Opener is a great way to avoid that.
Yeah, I love Opener. I use it every day. I got a bunch of auto open settings.
So Opener is the kind of app that I found myself using more and more with iOS 11, but there are other apps, other utilities that I find myself using less. And one of them is Workflow. I still use Workflow a lot. I use it more on my iPhone than I do on my iPad. But these days, it's mostly to connect to web APIs than it is to integrate various apps on my iOS devices because it's just easier with the existing system in iOS to do that without Workflow.
Look at you, Mr. Fancy, talking about web APIs.
Yeah, I know. Well, look, I'm mostly riding your coattails on these things. I'll readily admit that most of my workflows have been created by Federico Viticci and not John Voorhees. So.
Mm-hmm. Is it my turn now? Am I?
It is your turn.
Okay. So the round robin keeps spinning, and I'm up. And I want to mention this is the only productivity related example that I have, but it's about kind of re-embracing Apple Mail. We did just a couple of weeks ago. Show about our ideal email client and why we're so annoyed with Apple Mail and why it's so behind in terms of modern features. But there's one feature that I love. Actually, two. One of them is the clean design. I always said it's too bad that the Mail is so behind because it's clean, it's got a default look that I like, and it's fluid. I like using Mail just from a scrolling and swiping and looking point of view. The second feature that I like is the drag and drop integration on the iPad with iOS 11. something that I'm doing a lot lately is when I go through my email. So this is a bigger topic that we'll talk about, but I have a new time tracking setup. I'm trying to be more disciplined about where I allocate my time. And so every couple of days, I have a to do that says, go through your email. So when I go through my email, I put mail on the left and things on the right. And with drag and drop, what I do is I can pick up a message in mail and I can drop it into my task manager. I can assign it a due date or a tag or move it to a project. But what I love is that things picks up the subject line of the email and it puts in the note field a mail emoji and a link back to the original message so that I can archive the message from my inbox, but I retain the ability to open that message even if it's in the archive a few days later. So, if I save a reminder for something important, then I can, when I mark it as complete and I want to reply to that person, I can tap on the link and I go back to the original message. And this ability to have mail and things, or really any other task manager that supports this feature, I think you can also do the same with Todoist. It's awesome because it's this kind of setup that makes messages more actionable in a way that with iOS 11 was not possible. What I don't understand is why isn't Spark doing this? Why is not Outlook doing this? This ability to export messages as a subject line and a link that takes you back straight to the original conversation is fantastic, and more email clients should. I know that Airmail does it, but more email clients should implement this.
Yeah, well, that's right there is in a nutshell why I do most of my email on the Mac, because Spark does do that on the
I
Mac.
know.
And I will very often be in a situation where I will send somebody some information about a sponsorship or whatever it might be, and want to set myself a reminder for however many days in the future to get back to them if I haven't heard anything. And I can do that very easily on the Mac, not so easy on iOS. So I feel your pain on that one. One of the things that I've found on the iPhone 10 that I really wasn't expecting that I enjoy as much as I do, but it's the swiping between apps just from the bottom of the screen, right?
That's a good one. Yeah.
You move very, very quickly between apps. And I tend to, at any one time, if I'm on my phone, I'm probably using 4 or 5 apps, right? I might be in Twitter and I'm tapping on links to get to Safari. I might want to save that link in Notes. I might see something I want to throw into Todoist. So it's very, just going through and looking at Twitter, I might open 3 or 4 more other apps. And having that ability to quickly switch between them by swiping at the bottom of the screen, it's fantastic. It's a lot faster than dealing with things on the iPhone in the past.
Yeah, I love the gestures on the iPhone 10. And that one is, I'm still getting used to it. I still forget about it, but every time I remember, I'm like, oh yeah, this is nice. All right, so now we're getting into the good stuff. My next example of iOS 11 having an impact on what I do on my iPhone in this case is one of the new HealthKit APIs, one of the new HealthKit data types. It's waist circumference, and it's basically it relates to the fact that I started a new workout routine in January with the goal of losing at least during 2018. I want to lose at least 10 kilograms. That would be 22 pounds in 2018, which is I think it's it's a medium goal, not too high, not too low. It's right there in the middle. I think I can do it, but it's gonna take time. And to monitor my progress, now in the health app, there's this data type for waist circumference. And the beautiful thing about this is that Workflow was updated, the latest release that came out, I think towards the end of 2017. But Apple, because now Workflow is an Apple app, they added support for this HealthKit data type. So I have this little workflow that uses the waist circumference mode of the log. I think the action is called log health record or something like that. And it's just a 3-action workflow that asks for a number and saves the number into, I think it's a 2-action workflow actually, that saves the number into the HealthKit database. So now every morning I have this how would you call it? I'm not sure. A little measuring tape, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I take my measurement, I pick up my iPhone, I swipe over to the workflow widget. There's the button that I need to press. I save the number, and I'm done. And hopefully, toward the end of the year, that number will be significantly, inferior to where it is right now.
I was imagining something much more fancy where you have like a Bluetooth belt.
No.
That
Does that ever exist?
automatically...
Is that a thing? Bluetooth belts?
I'm sure it is. That automatically measures your waist and transmits it to your iPhone every morning when you put your pants on.
That would be that's fancy, but no, it's just measuring tape, John.
All right.
Actually, I feel this is exactly what people expect from me. It's measuring tape from IKEA.
Of course it is. Yeah, it's a free one that you can pick up when you're there, right?
When I went to IKEA, I took a bunch. Like I put my hand right into the can. I was like 10 measuring tapes, I guess, and I put it in my pocket, and like nothing happened. Yeah,
yeah, like a handful of candy at the store. That's great. I don't know how I can follow that one up, Federico.
I don't know. What you want to talk about here? Let me see.
I want to talk about split view.
Okay.
It's a lot more mundane than your Bluetooth belt, but split view is something that makes collecting any information on the internet a lot easier. I've found myself getting into the habit, especially with Todoist, keeping it in a narrow pane on the right-hand side so that when I'm in email or whether I'm in Twitter or whether I'm in messages, whatever it is, I can take links or text or whatever and just drag them into tasks. And I have in the past used more things to collect information, but I found the more and more I use it, the more and more I like having things dumped into Todoist. Not necessarily with a to-do date or anything like that, but a list of things that I want to, whether it's an idea for a story, whatever it is, it goes into a list on Todoist. And as long as it has some sort of actionable thing in the future, and then I'll eventually get to it, check it off, and move on. But having that available and open on the right-hand side as I'm looking at Safari is fantastic.
My next item is photos, and specifically, people don't talk about this often, but the new animation effects, the new animations that you can add to a live photo in iOS 11. I use, there's three of them, I think loop, bounce, and long exposure. I use the bounce one a lot because it's perfect for puppies that run around and jump a lot.
Is that the one that kind of goes back and forth?
Yes, it bounces back and forth. And it's perfect because it's so fun to like, there's one of Ginger, one of my dogs. She's chasing Zelda, which is her sister. And she jumps, and it's like she jumps and she comes back. She jumps and she comes back. And it's so fun because when you get it right, when you have the right live photo and you apply this animation, it's super fun. I want to take more live photos that are suitable for the long exposure one, the effect, because I've seen people take amazing long exposure pictures by taking a live photo and then applying this effect. And I want to do that too, but I guess I still need to visit a waterfall since iOS 11 came out. Still haven't been to a waterfall, John. And maybe that's a problem because that effect is perfect for rivers and waterfalls, and I guess, I don't know, shooting stars. I don't know.
No, I haven't used that. I haven't used that one either. It is neat though what you can do with live photos. Federico, I think I'm finished with my list, so I'm going to give you a bonus round robin. Why don't you hit us with one more?
Oh, thank you. I want to go with the Apple Music social features. I know that it's customary to make fun of Apple's social endeavors, and that's justified because in the past, Ping and, Apple Music Connect, they were awful. But the social stuff that they added with iOS 11, the ability to see what your friends are listening to, just the simplest addition to the For You page, it's really working well for me. As I've said many times, still using Spotify and Apple Music at the same time. There's a month that I use Spotify more. There's a month that I use Apple Music more. But lately, I've been checking out Apple Music again in preparation for the HomePod. And every time I go into the main For You page and I'm like, oh yeah, Mike is listening to this album or John is listening to this new single. And it's really working well for me because it's such a small feature comparison to what Spotify does. For example, there's like real-time streaming and collaborative playlists, which I want to see in Apple Music, the collaborative stuff. That's a missing feature. But just this small, it doesn't get in your, it's not like an in-your-face type of social feature. It's not like there's Twitter in Apple Music. No, it's not like that. It's a grid of music with a tiny avatar, and you can see what your friends are listening to. And it's so useful because every time, like when a new band as a new single or a new EP out, for example, and I don't know about it, I can go into the Apple Music stuff, social layer. And because I follow the right people, it's essential that you follow friends who listen to a lot of music for this to be useful. But I find those new releases there. And so I'm really happy with the way that Apple designed this because for once they did a social feature that is actually useful and is actually well designed.
Yeah, it's definitely the sleeper feature of Apple Music. And I think in a way that it's done so well because they didn't try too hard. It's just a really thin layer, as you said, with small avatars. And here's what your friends are listening to today. And you can tap on it or you cannot. And I've found that far more useful than things like the new music mix, which is easily polluted by something you listen to. And I've gotten to the point where I feel sometimes like, should I listen to this or is this going to ruin my mixes for the rest of the week?
Yeah,
because
you
the
listen to a
is...
Christmas song once? Well, here you go, 50 songs about Christmas.
Right. And it's gotten better when it comes to the algorithmic stuff, but it's still not great. And I find myself more often than not just clicking into the albums and the playlists that friends have made because if you, as you said, if you follow enough people and you follow the right people who have similar tastes to you, it's a great way to discover things. And I know you're back on Apple Music because I've seen you there this week.
I wanted to ask you if you saw me, but there's no hiding from you, John. I think that's a pretty good list of iOS 11 features and how they impacted the way that we use our devices.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's been an evolution, and it's in some respects it's at the margins, but overall I've been pretty happy with the way it's impacted the way I use both my iOS devices, and for me, how it's changed the way I use my Mac as well. So thanks again to our sponsor this week, Walter 2, and we'll talk to everybody next week. You can find us on Twitter, of course. I am at John Voorhees, JohnVoorhees, and Federico is at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'll talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.